I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Cost.
Here.
Mrs. Floyd. Here. Mr. Frazier.
Here.
Ms. Hall. Here. Mr. Lang.
Here.
Mr. Mangus.
Here.
Mr. Marmee.
Present.
Mr. Rath.
Here.
Mr. Blake.
Here.
And Mr. Buck.
Here. We have all here this evening. Would you please rise for the invocation by Mrs. Floyd, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you bow your heads and can we have a moment of silence, please, for the 59 people who died and the 500, last figure I heard, 27 who are injured. Almighty God, we live in a dangerous world. We live in a world where we don't know what's going to happen next, whether it be hurricanes or floods or a shooter or somebody in a foreign country who wants to attack us. We ask that you be with us tonight as we go through our deliberations on the issues facing Newark City Council. We thank you for the many rights and freedoms that we have living in Newark, Ohio. We ask that you be with our safety forces and our armed forces both here and around the world. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Ford. Next on the agenda, we have caucus. That's a time for council to discuss anything pertinent to the agenda tonight. Also on council this evening, we have to invoke Rule 11 for Resolution 17-73, appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation, if it's okay with Mrs. Floyd and Mr. Marmee.
Yes.
And we'll do that during miscellaneous. Next, we have the minutes of our September 18, 2017 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those? Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Frazier. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have 6 reports this evening from standing committees, one from Finance, Service, Street, Economic Development, Personnel, and Capital Improvement. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Next on the agenda, we have comments from citizens. There's 2 places for comments. One is now and one is after the legislation. This is not a debate with council. This is just your opportunity to be heard. Do we have anyone that would like to speak tonight? If you put your hand up, then I will at this first section. Okay. We'll move on to ordinances on the second readings. Do you want to speak now or wait? Okay. Ordinances on the second reading, 17-39.
Ordinance 17-39 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Bubb, Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Newark City Safety Director to certify to the Licking County Auditor the sum of $165,262.06 incurred by the Newark City Property Maintenance Department with respect to property maintenance violations to be placed as a lien upon certain parcels of real property situated in the city of Newark, Ohio.
You've heard the second reading of 17-39. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 17-39.
Second. Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Cost. Do we have any discussion on 17-39?
Mr. President, these are liens placed on properties for property maintenance issues. We do this periodically throughout the year.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes. 17-39 passes 10-0. Next, we go to ordinances on the first reading, 17-41.
Ordinance 17-41 by Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Rath, an ordinance vacating a portion of Burt Avenue running west from Union Street. Said street right-of-way is located between 278 and 282 Union Street.
17-41 will be held 2 weeks for a second reading. And also on the first reading, we have 17-42.
Ordinance 17-42 by Mr. Bubb, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, an ordinance creating 2 positions of court security bailiff within the municipal court and setting compensation therefore.
17-42 will also be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. Next, we move on to resolutions on the second reading, 17-64.
Resolution 17-64 by Mr. Rapp, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd, and Mr. Frazier. A resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service to prepare and submit applications to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvements Program and to execute contracts as required.
You've heard the second reading of 17-64. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rapp?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 17-64.
Motion by Mr. Rapp,
Second.
second by Mr. Cost. Is there any discussion on 17-64?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rapp?
I had the mayor agree to speak on this evening, but he's unable to attend, so I'll just relay to you what he told me. This is a program that is designed to expand and repair the railroad crossing at Thornwood Interchange. It's a joint venture between us, Newark, Heath, Hebron, and Licking County, and this is a next step into the Thornwood crossing and Thornwood expansion. Will be a large step in leading to further development on the west end of Newark.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp. Any other discussion on 17-64? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
No.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Or excuse me, Mr. Rapp, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Bub.
Yes. 17-64 passes 9-1. Next, we go on to resolutions on the first reading, 17-65.
Resolution 17-65 by Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rapp, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
17-65 will be held 2 weeks for a second reading. Now we have 17-66.
Resolution 17-66 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rapp, a resolution appropriating and disappropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
17-66.
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee.
I make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on 17-66.
Second.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Marmee.
Yes, we need to expedite some of these items. They are all these items, excuse me. There are things that need paid immediately, so we need to waive the 2-day reading.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Autumn, please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rapp?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck.
Yes. The 2-day reading rule has been waived, Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt resolution 17-66.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any other discussion on 17-66? Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rapp?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck.
Yes. 17-66 passes 10-0. Next on the first reading, we have 17-67.
Resolution 17-67 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rapp, and Mr. Frazier, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
17-67 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. Next on the first reading, we have 17-68.
Resolution 17-68 by Mr. Rapp, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, a resolution of intent to appropriate the real estate known as parcel number 054-271110-00.001, Newark, Licking County, for maintaining and improving the Manning Street Bridge within the city of Newark, Ohio, authorizing the mayor to give notice to the owner of such lands as required by law and declaring an emergency.
17-68 is on its first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rapp.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 17-68.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any discussion on 17-68?
Mr. President.
Mr. Rath.
I typically like to speak on each piece of legislation I nominate for adoption that has the emergency clause, but I'll spare you all and speak of the next 5 resolutions at the same time. All 5 of these are for either the Manning Street Bridge or the Ohio Street Bridge. They all have to do with simply paperwork and reclaiming small, tiny pieces of land, some of which are actually in the bottom of the Licking River. And it's a formality to officially acquire those pieces of property and then complete the purchase on those two pieces of the Licking River.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes. 17-16 passes 10-0. Next, we have 17-69.
Resolution 17-69 by Mr. Rath, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee. A resolution of intent to appropriate the real estate known as parcel number 2A and 2B WD, Newark, Licking County, for maintaining and improving the Ohio Street Bridge within the city of Newark, Ohio, authorizing the mayor to give notice to the owner of such lands as required by law and declaring an emergency.
And as Mr. Rath said, these next four are concerning the Ohio Street Bridge. This is emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President?
Mr. Rath.
A motion to adopt 17-69.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any discussion on 17-69?
Ditto.
Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes. 17-69 passes 10-0. Next, we have 17-70.
Resolution 17-70 by Mr. Rath, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee. A resolution of intent to appropriate the real estate known as parcels number 6T and 6WD, Newark, Licking County, for maintaining and improving the Ohio Street Bridge within the city of Newark, Ohio, authorizing the mayor to give notice to the owner of such lands as required by law and declaring an emergency.
17-70 is on its first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish, Mr. Rath?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt 17-70.
Mr. Rath? Second by Mrs. Floyd. Any other discussion on 17-70? Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes. 17-70 passes 10-0. And we have two to go. Next, we have 17-71.
Resolution 17-71 by Mr. Rath, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee. A resolution of intent to appropriate the real estate known as parcels 7T and 7WD, Newark, Licking County, from maintaining and improving the Ohio Street Bridge within the city of Newark, Ohio, authorizing the mayor to give notice to the owner of such lands as required by law and declaring an emergency.
You've heard the first reading of 17-71. Although it is an emergency, what is your wish, Mr.
Mr.
Rath?
President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt 17-71.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mrs. Floyd. Any discussion on 17-71? Ditto. Seeing none, I'll please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes. 17-71 passes 10-0. And finally tonight, we have 17-72.
Resolution 17-72 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee. A resolution of intent to appropriate the real estate known as parcel number 054-212748-00.000, North Licking County, for maintaining and improving the Ohio Street Bridge within the city of Newark, Ohio, authorizing the mayor to give notice to the owner of such lands as required by law and declaring an emergency.
Once again, 17-72 is on the first reading. Although it is an emergency, what is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr.
I'd
Rath.
like to make a motion to adopt 17-72.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mrs. Floyd. And finally, any discussion on 17-72?
Ditto.
Anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Buck?
Yes. 17-72 passes 10-0. And that concludes our legislation this evening. Thanks for your attention. We appreciate that. Next on the agenda, we have our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Again, this is not a debate with council. This is just your chance to be heard. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Put your hand up if you'd like, ma'am. We'll start with this young lady right here.
Hi, my name's Dawn.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. You have to come up here and give us your name and address for the record. I'm sorry. I didn't say that very well.
My name is Dawn Pettit, and I live on Mount Street. Do you want the street, the number, house number?
Okay.
317 Mount Street?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm here because I'm opposed to moving the gazebo out on East Main Street. I feel that this is an attempt to deal with the homeless in a really poor way. I think it's something that the citizens of Newark have said that they're opposed to it. This was discussed maybe within the last 2 years. It was in the Advocate. There was a lot of citizens that were opposed to it. I feel like that it wasn't done on the level. I think the gazebo should stay, and I have 3 questions. Were the mayor and the county commissioners the only one that made this decision? Who are the private donors that are funding this move, and what can be done to stop this?
Thank you. I just will say it's not a council action. It's an administrative action. I don't know the answer to your 3 questions, but I do know that much. Anyone else would like to speak this evening? You would too. You'll be next.
Baby, Dean Lane, 405 Lexington Avenue. I'm here about the gazebo also. For 25 years, this is my 25th year, I have played Santa Claus in this town. For 25 years, I've taken money out of my own pocket for candy canes and set on that gazebo one weekend, one day that weekend before Christmas. I'd advertise it on Facebook, and people could come down, bring all the kids they wanted, take all the pictures they wanted, and I didn't charge nobody a dime. I don't want to see that gazebo move. That's been there half my life. The downtown square is the showpiece of the city of Newark, not the Canal Market Street. I could care less about that thing. The square is owned. The ground, I get tired of hearing the city owns the property. The city don't own that property. The citizens of Newark own that property. And the citizens of Newark are against anything being done further to that courthouse square. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good look to do the candy cane thing. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Put your hand up so I'll know. One more? That's it? Okay. Ma'am?
Sheena Abel, 640 West Main Street, 648 West Main Street.
Ma'am, I have to ask you to speak up a little bit. Right?
Okay, Sheena Abel, 648 West Main Street in Newark. And I'm here representing our group, Preservation of the Courthouse Park and Gazebo, that was put together. This group was made up 3 days ago by Kathy Dickerson Traeger. And in 3 days we have 1,011 members. And here are some comments. I don't know if you guys want to read any of them, or I can read one. One that really is from Doug Stout. I'm sure everybody knows who Mr. Doug Stout is. It's wonderful. Here's what he says. Here's my personal view that represents me only. In Europe, how old are the buildings? Why do people visit them? Because those buildings bear witness to history. I would walk in parts of France and realize that what I was seeing, American doughboys had seen. What do we as individuals hold most dear? Our memories. To stop at something and say, I remember when your grandfather held me right here while I watched Santa like the courthouse. Why are we so happy when things are preserved? Because of memories we share with them. We hold Newark people remember DeVito's bookstore and the fountain counter it held. Would you like to sit at that again? How about walk into Grant's downtown? The reason isn't because I can't stuff like that anywhere else. It's the memories. Americans rip up memories. The gazebo has no memory for me at all. It wasn't there as part of my generation, but for many hundreds it does. There's no logical reason to move it. I understand things are heading to Canal Market, and that's fine. It's beautiful, and memories will be made there. Hopefully in 25, 30 years, progress won't consume the Canal Market. We want people to visit downtown. We have to quit tearing memories up. I'm sorry moving them. They aren't tearing it down. moving it dislodges the memory. I understand buildings being torn down because they have gotten to disrepair. This hasn't leave it. It's part of Newark. It's our memories. Thank you. And I agree wholeheartedly with Doug Stout. I've taken my grandchild many times to see Santa Dean at the gazebo. I took my children there when they were little. I've grown up in this town. I remember going to courthouse lightings when I was a little girl. And I don't see what it hurts to have the gazebo there. The Canal Market, myself, I'm not a fan of. They got music there playing. You can't see it. You're standing out in the street looking at an empty grocery store or empty buildings. The courthouse, you got beautiful trees, bushes, flowers, our other beautiful buildings, but we have nowhere to sit. They took the tables. They have nowhere, and the gazebo needs to stay where it is. You put it down east, it's going to get destroyed. It'll become a graffiti chalkboard, and it'll be beyond disrepair if it gets down there. And I just like to say I like to see it stay where it's at. Thank you.
If you'd like to leave any of those, I will
Yes.
pass them on if you just want to hand them to Dee.
Yeah.
Hand them to Dee.
There you go. Yes, thank you.
Ma'am? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dreama Hughes. I live at 170 South Webb Street here in Newark, and I too am opposed to the gazebo being moved. We keep asking the question, why are people not coming downtown? Because we keep moving everything away from downtown. We're taking away from the beauty. I've heard people say, well, there's too many homeless people hanging around downtown. Unfortunately, that is true. We need to find something better for our homeless people. Rather than move the gazebo to the east side, which I'm not opposed to something being done, but let's build the east side their own gazebo. They don't need to take the one that's on the square. I, for one, love walking around the square. I have been down there many times. I've walked down there as late as 9 o'clock at night, even in the fall when it is dark. I'm not scared of those people hanging out on the square. It does not bother me, even with my kids with me, okay? But what I am opposed to is us shutting the door away from the homeless people. They need somewhere to go to. They're living under bridges. So what? They're sitting at a picnic table. They have never bothered me. I've heard people say they come up and ask for money. I'm sure they do. I've had people come and ask me for money at the post office. That's no different than anywhere else. I've had them ask me for money at Walmart, okay? What are we doing about that? Nothing. But moving the gazebo is not going to move the people away from downtown. We need to find a better solution for the homeless if that is the problem, if that's what the problem is, you know, getting people away. I love the benches down there. I miss the picnic tables. I would go to McDonald's or Wendy's or La Paloma, eat lunch with my grandkid or my nieces and nephews. I now have a granddaughter, so I was looking forward to doing stuff with her down there. We need to leave the gazebo alone. You know, I'm totally against it, but I do appreciate you working on Ohio Street to get me back home.
Okay. One more. We have one more. Anyone else you want to speak? Put your hand up now. Okay, so we have
You got one here or one?
1, 2, 3. We have 3 more.
Hi, I'm Victoria Kahn, 24 Jefferson Street, Newark. I'm opposed to moving the gazebo as well. I've been here 50 years in this town, so no, it's not one of those landmarks that I grew up around like some of the other places they were mentioning, but it is nice we have events there. People love to come sit on the lawn. I don't know what your plan is. If it was moved, how that would change that, the events that go on, and people love to come and sit in here. I mean, that car show last time, you know, we have bands come in and out. There's talk of the parking going around, perhaps, and this might not have anything to do with it, but the parking going around the courthouse as well. So if we were to remove the gazebo to expand parking, then we are, and then I also heard that it was to free up more green space. Well, I don't see how that's possible. If you're going to move it to free up green space and then consider also doing the circular parking around there, which is going to eliminate the green space, which of course is what nobody wants. Nobody wants the green space eliminated. And I agree. I don't know why if you need a gazebo out east, why can't one just be built out there for whatever reason? Homeless people is a situation. We need a big house for homeless people. I know there was an article in the paper about kids riding their bicycles in town and causing issues. The kids need a place to go. I also walk every night downtown with my dog. I've never had anybody bother me. Now, doesn't mean I'm a girl, I'm a woman, it's late, but you get antsy a little, you got to be on your toes, but I've never had anybody bother me. I don't see that as a problem. Maybe I'm not seeing everything, but I just kind of wanted to support the people here that, feel that it should stay. Thank you.
This gentleman and then this young lady in the purple.
Hi, my name is Bill Marty. I live at 625 Cedar Run Road. I just dropped my boys off at the Boy Scout meeting, and I felt like since I was made aware of this kind of late, I was needed down here. We have had the National Day of Prayer at the gazebo for nearly 20 years until the construction, and was looking forward to going back and having the prayer around the square on the National Day of Prayer, which, with them desiring to move the gazebo is a civic attraction. It's not a big name thing like the Lou and the Reese Center, the pavilion over at COTC. This is where the little weddings can be done, little bands can play, or large, medium-sized bands can play, with the picnic tables, new picnic tables put around where people can go out and enjoy lunch. And but most of all with the National Day of Prayer and participating with different activities. Expanding to take the gazebo away to expand parking. Actually, I don't think no parking should be expanded on the courthouse square at all, period. Because the green space balances out the courthouse and the road and the other buildings. We don't want a Zanesville, where there's so many buildings and so much concrete to the point where you've lost your green space. Because as soon as we start losing green space, it's going to be eaten up in little projects such as this. So we need to consider balancing out the green space. We have a gym with the courthouse, with the gazebo, with the green space, putting new tables back around where it is welcoming to the community. So much has been done. I've been looking at the paper. I just went, looking at all the stuff that's being done around town, especially downtown. We don't want to take away. We want to draw people into the community, at the courthouse, to shop at Subway, to shop at the gas station, whatever. But we don't want to push them away, because if it goes out there, where the old children's home is, it's just another has-been building. But right now, it was put there for a purpose. So it'd be nice for us to continue to allow it to stay put and continue to fulfill its purpose for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more.
I'm Kathy Dickerson-Traeger. I started the website, and I invite all of you to go to the site and see a lot of the comments that were made. I'm really tired, so I know my voice is shaky here. I'd like to know why 75 parking spaces are needed for the courthouse employees. That's what I've read, that they need them for. And The probation, prosecutor, and domestic relations have moved out of the courthouse. That leaves 4 courtrooms, probate and juvenile court, and criminal clerk of courts. Why do they need 75? I don't think there's 75 people that work there anymore with everything that's moved. And why did they take all the spaces away that they did? I don't get what the point was. And now they don't have enough? And they narrowed the driving area on surrounding streets with these concrete slabs that stick out in the streets everywhere. I don't understand. And my late husband and I used to take my grandson down there, and when he was 3, we'd go down to see the lights. He ran back in the house to get his train because he wanted to go up on the gazebo, and he ran around and around and around in it. And every time I see it, that's what I remember. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm Tom Cronin. I live on 31st Street in Newark, and I'm all for keeping the gazebo, but I was downtown this morning and I was sitting over on the northeast side of the square, and I noticed a worker had already started dismantling the gazebo, taking the trim off around the roof. Just wanted to let everybody know. Thank you.
Thank you. One more.
There. Jen Carnegie, 2584 Upland View Court.
I'm sorry.
Jen
Go ahead.
Carnegie?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've probably talked to a couple hundred people in the last few days, and I have had between social media, well, there was one comment on social media that was positive, and it was a business owner about keeping the gazebo. But all the doors I hit all weekend long, didn't matter if they were Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green, everybody wants to keep the gazebo where it is. So I think that I just needed to say that for everybody that I've talked to in the last couple of days since this article's come out. So hopefully the mayor watches this. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone from the ministry? Ma'am, this will be it.
Hi, my name is Julie Barrett. I live at 42 North 31st Street, Newark, Ohio. And as an artist, I have always looked at the courthouse, surrounding the courthouse, the grass and the trees, and the things that have been put there, especially the gazebo, as a very attractive and a welcoming, beautiful thing to look at. I think the parking, removing the grass and making a parking lot in there, I think that's a bad idea. I think it will detract from how much money has been spent to beautify our courthouse, and then you're going to put parking around it and put asphalt and destroy the grass and take the gazebo away. I mean, it just doesn't fit. It's not a good idea. And I was disturbed to hear that they've already started it with so many people voicing their opinion against it. I certainly hope that whoever is in charge of it will reconsider, and if nothing else, put it to a vote. I don't think the people of the city of Newark want that gazebo removed, or all the grass and the beautiful things that surround the courthouse to go away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. I don't know much about the parking plan, but I do believe that they are not going to be parking around the courthouse. So I believe that's what they've decided. I'm not sure where they're going to park, but not around the courthouse. Anyone from administration? Mr. Baum, were you going to speak? Sure.
This is our safety director. Steve Baum, Newark Safety Director. I've participated in a couple parking meetings, and as far as I know, there are absolutely no plans to park around the courthouse or remove green space to create additional parking for courthouse employees. Just to clear that up. A couple of the security concerns for the gazebo in its current condition. Number one, it's not ADA compliant. We've put that off for a while. Number two, we did have a problem with homeless people sleeping under it, sleeping in it, sleeping around it. Homeless problem aside, separate issue. That's a problem. People can't sleep on the courthouse. I would point out that change is tough, and there's nobody particularly likes it. There are benches around the square as opposed to on the courthouse lawn. I don't know whether we're plus or minus as far as benches go, but the benches on the courthouse, which were viewed as a problem with people on the courthouse square during the day. From 1978, security is not the same for government buildings anymore. We're going to install security here in the city building. We're going to lock down the exterior doors. There's going to be a couple bailiffs here. There's going to be an x-ray machine. There's going to be a magnetometer. It's going to cost money. People aren't going to be convenienced coming to the city building when we install that. They're going to be slightly inconvenienced to get where they want to go if they're a visitor. But to the gazebo, with homeless people sleeping under it, homeless people sleeping on it, when you're having an event on the courthouse lawn, the county felt like they needed to open the first floor of the courthouse for restrooms. Another security problem. I've heard a few comments, and I respect them, about not wanting to move things to another location, but our courthouse lawn isn't necessarily the site for regular venues. I haven't heard anything about eliminating car shows. I haven't heard anything about eliminating courthouse lighting. But to move the gazebo is a security matter. It was an administrative decision. There were issues with vandalism during concerts. The last three I can think of were a broken handrail, a broken statue, and a non-functional fountain after our concert. Is it popular? No, we didn't think it would be popular with everybody. But was it necessary? Yeah, it was necessary. So that's a security perspective for moving a gazebo. It's not, I didn't grow up here. I didn't take my children to play on the gazebo. I don't have those memories, so I understand that's going to cause some discomfort. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the administration? No more. Anyone else from the administration? Our Honorable Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll pass.
Mr. Cost.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight and feeling like you can express your views in an open and honest manner. I'm going to be the first one to say I'm not happy about see it being moved. To me, the gazebo is part of the courthouse. It's been there for 30 years. It's become a significant part of the downtown, of the square. I'm sure what they're planning on doing with it as a memorial park at the children's home site will be very well done. But I personally hate to see it happen. In the parking meetings that I have been to, they have decided that the parking will not be expanded around the courthouse. The only parking that will be there is where the police bring in prisoners and defendants for trials, and they're going to have that parking lot so that the judges can park there and the police cars can park there, and that they would actually be able to turn around. So there won't be an expansion of public parking, just the area where the officials are for the courtroom proceedings. But I understand your feelings. And I think as Safety Director Baum said, change is very difficult. I'm the first one to admit I struggle with it. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. Mrs. Floyd?
I'll say ditto on the parking issue. I've been to 2 parking meetings as well as Mr. Cost has, and basically they're not going to have major parking other than what's already required. But I'll say I agree with you people. I really do. Since I was 4 years old, I've lived within a mile of the square of the courthouse. I can see the top of the courthouse from my house. I have always felt safe on the square. I volunteer at the Midlands, so I'm down there late at night, and I have to walk sometimes over to the Park National Bank lot or wherever I happen to park for the concert. I do not want us to become a community of them and us, and I'm afraid sometimes we become that. We become a community, and I know some business people are concerned about some of what happens downtown, but I do not want us to become a community where us, the nice, normal, average people, don't want the thems, the people who are homeless or don't have very much, or those people who stay at St. Vincent de Paul at night or stay at the Salvation Army and have to leave during the day. Where do they go? I mean, and I know that's not something that government can solve totally, but I do see, and I know there are some problems with the gazebo, the ADA, and that kind of thing. On the other hand, I want us to be an inclusive community that sort of welcomes everybody. I just think moving it is not a good idea. It's not going to be a popular idea, and it's probably going to create a problem for some people. And I'm an East Ender. I grew up in the East End. I taught at Lincoln for 30 years. I had many students from the Children's Home when I was teaching, and I know where the Children's Home site is. I was there when they tore it down. I'm not sure it's going to be used there. I know they've said they'll put a nice little park there, but it's off the beaten path. And unfortunately, back to the us and them thing, there are some people who are proud of the fact they've never spent any time in East End, Newark. And I find that a sad commentary. And I hope we're not a community that operates in that way. I don't know if there's anything as a community, as Mr. Ellington said, we didn't make the decision. This is not a council decision. It's strictly an administrative decision between the city administration and the county administration. So that's not something council did anything about. It's not something we have any control over, but I'll just say I agree with you. The gazebo should stay there. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Frazier?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So, to continue on with the gazebo topic. So, Don, I thought you had some great questions. So the first one, mayor and county commissioners have it in their authority to make this decision. It's not a council action. We found out about it a lot of the same way that you did. There's previous conversations about it, and then we found out the hard way. The private donors, you're going to have to ask the administration for the list of those. And then what can we do about it is probably the most important question, right? And so what you're doing is exactly what you should be doing. And so you should be speaking out, you should be vocal, and you should communicate to the administration and the county administration. Go into the county commissioners' meetings, express yourself, write to the advocate, write to whoever you can, your state officials, your local officials, and be vocal and be active, because that goes a long way in our community. Having you guys come in here was very impressive, because we like to see civic action and basically a voice. And what is that voice? That we want to preserve our history and we want to maintain. I try to be very careful about our government. So I'm on the legislative side. This is an administrative decision. They're allowed to make administrative actions. However, we all represent the people. So please express yourself, please be vocal, and please continue what you're doing. And thank you for coming here, and thank you for expressing yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Wall?
Yes, thank you. I would like to thank you all for being here tonight as well. I don't want to see the gazebo move from downtown. However, the east side would be kind of neat with a park and a gazebo. why not? I mean, people there picnic as well. They can enjoy a park out there. But if this gazebo is not up to code, then let's bring it up to code. So, thank you. And with that, I would call a Ways and Means Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Lang?
Yeah, I'd like to echo everyone's thoughts. You know, I do think it was great to have everybody come out here tonight. You know, even you're coming before a body that really didn't have any power to do anything about the decision that was made. But we absolutely do appreciate that you came out to speak, and I think it is important that we hear from the citizens and you voice your concerns. And I think Mark did a great job of laying out exactly the action that you should be taking. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Mangus?
Like everyone else, I'd like to thank you all for coming this evening. I've lived in Newark since 1998, and I only know of the gazebo being on the courthouse grounds. I've taken my kids to walk around the courthouse in December when the lights are up, and one of their favorite stops has always been the gazebo, just to run around, and Mom and Dad are getting tired, so we like to sit in the gazebo while they're running around a little bit more, admiring the lights. As everyone has said, this wasn't a council decision. Change is very difficult. Like Dee, I'm happy to see a park going in on the east end. I wish we had 2 gazebos, one on the east end and one downtown still. But again, thank you for coming, and make your voices heard. Keep lobbying the administration, lobby the county commissioners, and maybe a change can take place. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Mangus. Mr. Marmon?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too want to thank all of you for coming. I think everybody has pretty much said everything that could be said. I've been here my entire life since 1964, so I did see it built. I did see it when it first came about, and it's a sad day whenever there is change. The administration made a decision based upon safety, and so if something needs to be done, then that's where it needs to be done at. But I do appreciate your voices, listening to your concerns, and you know, there's a possibility that something can be done, and it has to come from all of you as well as us. We're voicing our opinion up here tonight too, the same as you. So I need to call a finance committee meeting also, and I need to at this point bring resolution 17-73 to the table, invoking Roy Levitt.
Resolution 17-73 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, and Mr. Rath, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
Heard the reading of 17-73. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee?
I make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on resolution 17-73.
Second.
Motion to waive by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Marmee?
Yes, the reason this needs to be expedited is because we will be paying additional funds in order for the storage of this salt if we do not expedite this.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule on 17-73.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
2-day reading rule is waived. Mr. Marmee?
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt resolution 17-73.
Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any other discussion on 17-73?
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Marmee?
I will just explain that this is for salt. Although we are not in the salt season, we did commit to purchasing this. If we do not purchase it in this year's budget, then we will have to pay for storage of it, which would cost us more, and we eventually still would have to pay for it. So this will actually save us money by doing this now versus later.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Mr. Blake?
Yes.
And Mr. Bub?
Yes.
17-73 passes almost 9 and the hesitation 10-0. Okay, Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I also would be remiss if I did not comment on the tragedy that occurred in Las Vegas. Mrs. Floyd mentioned it in the invocation. It's just sad, and I hope that all the prayers are out there for those family members of those that their lives were lost, and also those injured. It's amazing to me the changes that are occurring within the United States, and like something like that could happen at such a what's supposed to be a positive event. And my heart goes out to all the families and those individuals that did lose their lives and that are injured. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Rath?
Thank you. First off, I want to thank you all for coming. We appreciate you coming here. Commend you for doing that. And like everybody else has said, keep it up. Make your voices heard and amplify them by adding more people to it. The more you get involved, the more likely you are to affect change. I agree with Mr. Baum in saying that not everybody likes change. In fact, most people don't like change. We've had a lot of change in the downtown area. A lot of people were very resistant to that. And I think most people have come to like what we've done so far. I don't know that I agree with this particular change. As a matter of fact, I do know that I disagree with this particular change. Let me say that. I'd love to see the gazebo stay there. And again, it is a nice landmark, a nice eyepiece, a nice addition to the downtown area. Would love to see it stay there. As far as Las Vegas goes, I do know that we had 2 Newark residents that were not only in Las Vegas at the time, but were also at the concert. Michelle Giannetti and Rick Resden. Fortunately, both of them got out unscathed. They were not injured. They're safe, but they were there during the entire chaos. So thank God for that, and I wish them safe travels home. With that, I'll call a safety committee meeting, and scratch that. We'll not call a safety committee meeting, I'll call a service committee meeting. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr.
Taking my committee.
Unless we want to have a safety meeting too.
Thank you, Mr. President. Considering everything that's happened over the last 24 hours, I think I also want to send thoughts and prayers to all the families that are dealing with the situation in Las Vegas with the many innocent deaths and unnecessary harm that has plagued the city in Las Vegas, Nevada. But it also makes me think, could something like that happen here? I mean, here we recently had a shooting in our county, and it makes me wonder, as we were hired by the people to protect them, through our elections and whatnot, and do we have adequate resources to handle situations of such tragedy? Those are questions that we need to have, conversations we need to have. What if something like that was to happen here in Newark, Ohio? You never know. You just don't know these days. We have to be prepared. So we do want to offer thoughts and prayers for that situation. Something positive for the safety department and Steve Baum, I'm looking forward to joining the Citizens Police Academy, which is starting on Wednesday night. So that's it's a 2-month program for every Wednesday night. So I'm looking forward to joining that group of people. I don't know how many people signed up for that. 19. Okay, so that's looking going to be a good adventure. With regards to the gazebo, I think the gazebo is more than just a structure. We've had people have had rallies there, they've had weddings there, we've had family events there, you've had community events there. It symbolizes much more than just a structure. And my frustration with this ordeal is that we've had meetings about wanting to develop a vision for our city, about where we want to go. We've had some public meetings, there's been private meetings, but there's been this plan being developed as to where we want Newark to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so when ideas come up regarding parking to take away green space, or the administrative decision, I agree with all my fellow colleagues here that this clearly was. The downtown area, the mayor, who's not sitting here tonight, but that's who you need to be addressing your concerns and your comments to. because it was he and his teams, his staff, made that decision to join with the commissioners to do so. So it is disturbing because it brings about this division that's unneeded. I mean, it's really not necessary to cause. I mean, we have so many other issues that we need to debate and to discuss and work on as a community, but this really is sort of an unneeded distraction to what real issues that are existing in our city. You know, I thank you for coming here tonight. You know, I know that Sheena and there's a few of you that created this Facebook group within the last few days, and you have over 1,000 people participating in that. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Tuesday morning, go over to the county building. The commissioners' meeting is at 9 o'clock in the morning, so go over there. You know, come back here. You know, I didn't know that they're already dismantling the gazebo. That's kind of disheartening, considering that the article just came out recently. But make your voices heard. Make it as loud as you can. And so thank you for coming here tonight, and please don't give up, because it is disheartening. I'll call it Economic Development Committee meeting for Monday, and with that I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. And Mr. Buck.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to call a Personnel Committee meeting for next Monday. With that, I'll pass.
I'd like to add my thanks to everyone for coming this evening and having your voices heard. I know I didn't let you speak another time, but there are just certain rules I have to follow up here about when you can speak and when you can't. So don't take it personal. I too grew up in the East End. Like Mr. Marmee, I was born in like 65, I think. Maybe a little longer than that. But
Just a tad. That's pretty sad when that's when you're going.
I probably had you in school then.
Just a little. I had Mrs. Floyd as an 8th grade teacher. What's that tell you? I had.
She was patient.
Very nice. I do appreciate your comments. And again, Jeremy had a great idea. Go over to the commissioners' meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And the reason the mayor is not here is I did get a text about 6:30 saying he was under the weather, so he's not just dissing you to not be here tonight. He is sick this evening. So, whatever. But that's why he's not here this evening. He is here at about every council meeting. So again, come back. And I had no idea they were starting dismantling either. So I would just say your best bet is to keep up what you're doing. Again, thank you for coming. Our next committee meeting is the 9th, which is next Monday. We do not have Columbus Day off. Monday is a city work day at 5:30. And our next full council meeting is the 16th, 2 weeks from tonight, in this room at 7 o'clock. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Cos, second by?
Second.
Mr. Marmee, all those in favor, Mr. Lang, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We're adjourned.